It's the Tim and Dana podcast show. Don't you know that Bigfoot is on the go? It's the Tim and Dana podcast show. Don't you know that Bigfoot is on the go? It's the Tim and Dana podcast show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Bigfoot podcast show. I'm Dana Halloran.
And I am Tim Halloran. I was just thinking, watching the intro, that we need to get a photo with our next guest so we can get him in there with us. So
my gosh.
We won't give away yet who's like, well, we can, but we'll have to get a photo with him at some point so we can throw him in there. So
yeah, that sounds awesome.
So, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Awesome.
How have you been?
It's been good.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while since we saw each other.
So, you so silly.
We have a very cool guest.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Someone we know, and we'll do a little bit of an intro, but then we'll refer back to when we had him on the show previous, so folks can really get an understanding of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the one and only Robert Leiterman that's going to join us. Always fun and fascinating when we have Robert. A conversation with Robert. So let's bring Robert in. Oh, we were going to bring him in, but he
left us. We're abandoned.
Hello, how's it going?
Hey Robert, how's it going?
Good. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you. You're so far away from us, because where are you, Robert, right now?
I'm probably about as far west as you can get, almost on the West Coast, not counting Alaska or Washington State. There's always an argument because the lat longs, as the Earth is curved, some don't agree, but the Earth is curved. And if you go where we're at, you go far west as you could get, in that general area. So it's about the far west you could get on the North American area. Until you get up to Washington, there's an argument up there towards the Olympic Peninsula, whether that's farther west than what we are. But it depends on latitude and longitude. But
yeah, you didn't even think about that.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I wonder what the east, the farthest east point would be.
Well, the Earth's not flat.
Well, if the Earth were flat or round and a flat surface, it would still be the farthest part. But with that curved surface,
right?
Where you're down in Northern California or farther west, if you think about it as
gotcha.
You turn it to a square, then when you get up to Washington, it sticks out a little bit towards the Olympic Peninsula. But that's argued, or whether or not we count that or not.
That's so cool.
Wow. Yeah, that is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, because we're probably like what, about 4,000 miles?
No,
2,000 miles away. So you guys are experiencing, a whole different flora and fauna over here than we are. And then we have everything in between. So, let's get into, who Robert Leiterman is.
Yeah. So maybe if you
could,
a
little quick synopsis.
Quick one, because, for the audience, you can, we had Robert on episode 40 on the Untold Radio Network. And you can go back and learn all about his background there. But if you can give, the 2 or 3 sentence, who you are for the audience, and then we can kind of get into it.
Yeah. Robert Leiterman. I started out originally with the BFRO, and then eventually we got our own little kind of side group going. But wait, you probably saw the shirt. It's just ironic that I was wearing it today, out working. I just picked the shirt out of the thing, and then I almost forgot about our podcast interview. And then oh yeah, it's at 4:00. So I didn't change shirts or anything. I showed up. But yeah, my first start, people who were willing to trust me, I guess, on the subject was probably the Matt Moneymaker and the BFRO program. And it all kind of started officially, if you look at investigations, but probably about 1998-ish, 1999-ish, I was doing interpretive programs about the Bigfoot phenomena at the park as a park ranger. So we do campfire programs, little talk about the phenomena, but no commitment as to whether they exist or not, just more of an entertainment value. Because part of our job as a ranger was cultural, natural history, a bit of science thrown in there. So we're educating the public about the subject, and they need to be entertained. So we're entertaining them on the Bigfoot phenomena. That kind of got me started with that. And then there was a sighting in the park, alleged sighting, because I wasn't there to see it, but alleged sighting. And then I follow up investigation on it. And that's kind of when I first met John Freitas, who was with the BFRO at the time. And it was the dad walking on the trail with the son shoe came untied, dad stopped and was waiting, and they looked up, saw a naked individual from waist up, hairy, walking back and forth between a gap in the trees above the trail. And he said it wasn't a bear because it was walking on two legs. So he
And did you say naked?
Yeah, naked, waist up.
With hair, though.
No clothes, just
No,
hairy.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I didn't say waist
Not
up.
not a bear
I was
chested.
thinking that was just a man. That's not a Bigfoot. If you say naked.
Well, naked
Naked,
from waist up. That was the description. Naked from waist up, very hairy.
Okay.
Walking back and forth between the gap between trees. So evidently he came back after 5 minutes of running away, and it was gone. Didn't say anything, but he mentioned to the staff, asked if they had bears. They said no, there was no bears in the park, but there were. And then after that, he got a hold of BFRO, and BFRO did an investigation. And it was John Freitas, a few other individuals. They came up to the park. That sighting took place in August. They show up about Labor Day weekend, one of the busiest times of year. John Freitas has this big old ship speaker in the back of his car, wants to do call blasting. We can't do that in the park. And they told me about the sighting, and they're investigating it. And so it wasn't until a month later that I decided to go look for it myself. So I went up with another park gate of mine that was good at tracking. We went up there, investigated, found out that the location was there, but the activity that was described was a little bit different, because the description was it was rubbing against a stump. But there was a stump there, but it was covered with it was a burnt redwood stump, and it was covered with algae and lichen. So you could scratch the green off of it. So if anything scratched, it would have been notable. But next to it, just about a good 5 yards or so away, 10 yards, were 3 groves of redwood trees, about a foot diameter, and something had been rubbing against those. You could tell because the bark was young and soft, and young redwoods, and it was pressed down about a foot from the ground to about 6 foot up. So I noted that, took some pictures, and I did a little write-up, not for the park, but for the BFRO, just to explain that their information was a little incorrect. And so I submitted that in, and then next thing I know, I'm at Moneymaker, wanted to know if I want to become a curator for the BFRO, and then that started that, which meant investigating other sightings, talking to people, doing some research. Then I did that for a few years, and I got into videography. And that's, you give Robert a camera, and some film, and he goes crazy. But it was when I got tired of doing research, I got involved with kind of like the expeditions, and so that was about 2000, and I want to say 2005 or 4, one of those dates. But 2004, I got involved with expeditions. But prior to that was in 2003 for the Bigfoot Symposium in Willow Creek. And that's when I got to meet Bob Gimlin. I got to meet him. I got to meet Christopher Murphy. And that was, and John Green. And that was kind of
Kathy,
cool. And that was my
Kathy
first
Strain,
exposure.
right?
Yeah, Kathy was there, I believe.
Yeah, she was there. Yeah.
I can't remember if I met her there or met her at some other place. You have to, everything kind of meshes together.
That's actually where her and Bob met.
Yeah, I read
Bob
about
Strain.
that. I read about that in a book.
Uh-oh.
Which looks like this.
What? Love that
There's
book.
a section. You guys interviewed Kathy, and she talked about meeting Bob there at the event. And I can't even remember whether I met Kathy at the event there or I got a hold of her later, because I wrote an article about the Bigfoot rock art, the hairy man, and she had given me information on it. And that was back when I was doing a bunch of writing, and she gave me information to put an article together. And that's kind of where we started, hitting off and stuff, getting a chance to know each other a little better. And that was a while ago. But yeah, the dates kind of crashed a little bit. But after that, I got involved with the expeditions. I did that for a while. Up to 26 expeditions later, it was kind of cool. And then I got involved with the videography towards the end, where I wanted to film people looking for Bigfoot, not filming Bigfoot in case we saw it. Because the plan at the time was people traveling around with the cameras and the night vision attachments. And the whole idea was to try to capture an encounter. But I decided it'd be more fun to interview the people and watch people have the encounter. So that got me started with videography. And I finally got a hold of a camera. Wally said it was cool to have one, night vision. But Matt was okay with that too. He suggested it. And then the monster was created with videography. And so that led to Reader's Digest version, that led to me getting with Steve Stroyford and deciding to go out and look for the film site. And that kind of ties that in. And that was in 2010. But backing up a little bit, my involvement with Steven was more like 2007. I think it was the 40th anniversary. I met Steven officially. And then we headed off at Lost Camp. We talked around the campfire for hours. And then he mentioned that he was looking for that the film site was missing and he'd like to go look for it. And I said, yeah, good luck with that. Because I wasn't that concerned at the time. But in 2009 and 2010, I was like, let's go do it. So my plan was to film them doing it, because that was cool to videotape and research and stuff and put it up on at the time it was the BFRU YouTube channel, and now it's called something different. But that's what my gig was. And then after a few interviews and running around, I decided that it was a lot of fun. So I became a member of the team, the Bluff Creek Project. At the time I was filming, it was called the Bluff Creek Film Site Project. But my people I work with, well, they're not my people, the people I work with decided it'd be better if it was just the Bluff Creek Project. So I got outvoted. So it's not the Bluff Creek Film Site Project because we're not filming anymore. So it's the Bluff Creek Project. And then we got the camera going as the Bluff Creek Camera Project because we had the cameras, the game cameras we put up started doing that in 2012. And I like to write and stay busy. And that's probably the quickest introduction I've given ever. But there you go.
And that's pretty, yeah. And
that's cool,
yeah.
though.
So, and we're going to touch base on the book here in a little bit too. But I want to ask him something about being a park ranger. What was the most, do you have get into like any sketchy situations when you were doing that as a ranger out in the woods with people or animals?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of solo walking because we're patrolling around, and I've spooked a few bears off the trail in front of me, which is kind of fun. It's like your mind's somewhere else. You're moving along. It's getting late. And you're walking down the trails, and you're thinking of other things because that's what your mind does when you're. I was talking earlier today off camera that I was pulling weeds and building things, and my mind just keeps thinking about things. So you're walking down the trail. You're just mind somewhere else. And I went around a turn and I almost ran into the back of this bear that was walking down the trail in front of me. Big old black bear in the fall. Very healthy. And I kind of stopped a little bit, but they didn't hear me because it was probably thinking about other things too. So I was behind it and the winds were blowing right away. So it just kept walking down the trail and I'm thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. So I was walking behind it kind of discreetly and I was like, just watching it, but keeping it safe distance as I was going, because we're both going the same direction back to my car, which is probably about a good 1.5 miles away. And then I kind of scuffed on my feet and it hurt me and it galloped a couple steps and it stopped and looked left and looked right, sniffed the air, and it didn't turn around and look behind it. And then it kept walking. So that was kind of cool. Then I still walking behind it. And then it got to a point where this time it hurt it again. And it did the same thing. It stopped. It looks left, looks right, sniffs the air. And that time I had to go because it was getting late, And so it just freaked. And it goes, ticks off down the trail, cuts up the brush, snorts and weens. And you can tell it's right there, but you can't see it anymore. And it's pissed now because I surprised it. And then I kind of say, it's here, bear. It's cool, but it's fine. So then it kind of snorted a little bit. And then I continued to walk down the trail now that it was off the trail, but it flanked me for a little bit, but it kept its distance. And then it just kind of disappeared. And I kind of sped up and kept going my direction. But that was your bear things. And we ran into mountain lion before. Like a great mountain lion story is I'm in the back of my pickup truck and I'm sitting with my other ranger I work with, Thomas. And we're at the place in the way back called Hamilton Barn. It's like way in the back. And there's an old road trail that we drive on, the public can take horses and bikes, that kind of runs past this area, but we're kind of parked at a bridge. And we're sitting there in the back car having lunch, not talking much because you're just out in the door, you're just listening and sitting there. And then I'm sitting on the gun rails, which is the side, and Thomas is sitting on the posse box, which he's facing to the back. And I'm facing towards him and towards the front of the vehicle. And then I see at a distance, the road kind of rolls a little bit. Let me get my hand on there. It kind of rolls a little bit. And I see the upper portion of something, looks like a dog kind of moving back and forth. And it catches my attention. So I'm looking over, I'm watching, trying to figure out what it is, because we do have coyotes. It wouldn't be unusual to see them. And it's moving back and forth. And I still don't know quite what it is yet. And then it kind of stops and it kind of moves forward a little bit. And then it goes over another little hump, and I see a little more of it heading in our direction. And I see it's a cat. I go, wow, it's a cat. But I didn't say anything yet. And it kind of stops a little bit and kind of looks over his shoulder. And there's a second cat moving up behind.
Oh my God.
And then their third cat almost runs into the back of the second cat. So it's probably a mom with a couple of 1.5 years getting ready to wean them out. And now I'm all excited. I'm like, hey, Thomas, don't look, but look, you know. And so he kind of turns and looks, and he's sitting on the back of the posse box. So you have to look through the window, or he can look over the top of the pickup truck cab, but there's a light bar and stuff in the way. So we're watching now, and I'm thinking, you know, it'd be really cool to have this on film. I mean, this has been going on now for probably about a good 2 minutes. And I'm thinking it'd be good to have this on film. And so now I'm trying to undo my Velcro pocket and pull my little cheap digital camera out. And then you have to turn it on. It goes boop, 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 boop. And by this time, the cats have moved to a point, and now that either they sense us, or they see some movement, or they know something's not right. Because it's almost like the time that it's like they're looking, and there's a car in the way. We're sitting in it, but it can't see us. It sees the vehicle, and we're moving in the back of it, and they can see us through the windshield or whatever. But something's up, because it's looking around for us now. It's looking left and right. You can see it. And we're like trying to get the camera going, and this could be great footage, you know, and I'm ready to go. And then the moment it sees us, it goes. So eyebrows go up, the head goes back, and then it just disappears to the left. The second one goes, sees us, and disappears to the right. The third one's going, and then it disappears to the left. And we're like, I didn't get any of it on film, but we never see them. We don't hear them anymore. We don't see them, but we know they're on both sides of us, checking us out, moving around us, because they wanted to cross the creek and we were parked in the way. And that was kind of cool. And I'm pretty sure they watched us for a little bit. But I was listening, and I didn't see it. Thomas didn't see it, but we did see the encounter, which was really cool. And you could tell these stories to people. They go, But I had a witness that time, which is good. And the other thing is, I like to tie in my job to wildlife observation. So we also look for marijuana gardens. And that was one of our big things we did. And we get a little crew together with 2 or 3. And we go hiking and following game trails that are wider than they should be. Boot impressions, broken branches at certain heights, all the things you would say, yeah, Bigfoot went here, but usually it's dope growers. So we're following along these trails, and we're getting closer to the area there, and the squirrels see us, right? And what do you think the squirrels do?
Bark.
So one's telling the other ones, now the Stellar's jays, those beautiful blue birds that people call bluebirds, but they're not. They're Stellar's jays on the West Coast. So now they're calling everybody down hey, they're coming. Mm-hmm. So we have these squirrels escorting us, and the birds escorting us, and we're trying to get to this dope site. We're trying to be really stealth about it, right? And we're being, we're sneaking, trying to be real quiet. And before we got there, we saw the back end of a human moving out of the dope site. They had plenty of time. They knew we were coming. All the birds told them we were coming. The squirrels told them we were coming. And so much for being stealth. So that concept of moving around and thinking you're being quiet, when all the animals know you're the foreigner in the neighborhood, and they're letting everybody know you're there. And we try to think about how else could we have done this. And maybe if we were all ghillie suits and we were sneaking in ghillie suits, maybe the squirrels and birds wouldn't have noticed us so much. But then how do you do your job and be seen as a uniformed person if you're hiding in a ghillie suit? So that's not the good way to do business. Well, right. I thought you were a creature, so I shot at you.
Right.
You didn't identify yourself as a law enforcement officer or a ranger. So, but anyhow, so that's kind of ties in a little bit of the ranger stuff, but to nature. You kind of like the way I did that, brought it around.
I
So
do.
all
That
nature
was
stuff.
really cool.
Yeah. So for the audience, what park was this?
All those stories came from Humboldt Redwoods Park.
Okay.
Even the story of John Freitas and the BFRO and the investigation that got me into the full into the Bigfoot stuff, that was also Humboldt Redwood Park.
So it's a state park or national park?
It's a 53,000 acre state park. It's the third largest state park in California's system. And it's the largest redwood park for the state system. But the national park likes to include some of the state lands up there with theirs, but they have a lot of cut over land that they purchased back in the 60s, 67, I think 68 and 78, around there. They purchased a bunch of acreage, and that's why we have Redwood National Park up there, which is a good deal. But the state parks did all this purchasing of land before the feds did up there, just for the record.
Gotcha.
And I think
Makes sense.
the prettier units are in the state parks, not in the national parks up there.
Cool. So when you were working, obviously through your time there, I'm sure you heard stories after you kind of got interested in the Bigfoot subject. Did you ever catch any slack from your superiors talking about it?
Yeah, that's an interesting subject. That comes up a lot. It's when I remember they're back in the old days, back in around 1990, I guess it was 1998, and make sure I got the dates right. Yeah, 1998 and around 2000, I was doing interpretive programs already for campfires. And they were just interpretive programs. I've had the interpretive specialist, the person out of district in Eureka, show up to watch my presentation and critique my presentation and says, could you do any other subject matter? I mean, let's be real. You know, there are no creatures in the park. Like, can you do something like maybe spotted owl or the marbled murrelets? And those were two federally protected that were very controversial. And I go, do I want to talk about controversy of spotted owl and marbled murrelets and timber harbors? No, that's in a lot of programs. I want to talk about something totally different. So I says, thank you very much, but I'm not changing what I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with what I was doing. It was a good presentation. People loved it. They always said, yeah, this is great. And afterwards, the ones who were believers would come up to me and share stories about their encounters. And then, of course, there's other people who says, you know, you really should talk about other things. Thank you for playing. See you later. Have a nice day. But most of the people enjoyed it, and it was good. And I like that. And despite the pressure from administration, the interpretive people, I kept doing it. The problem came one day when Robert decided to go follow up on a sighting in the park. And I talked about that with John Freitas already. That was a problem when I wrote it up and sent it to the BFRO, and the BFRO posted it. And the next thing you know, somebody saw it and somebody complained to the supervising ranger at Patrick's Point, just the unit to the north. And they told my supervisor, who sent me a cease and desist letter, says, no more research, no more this, no more that. But I'm pretty sure he knew I was giving interpretive programs. In order to give a program, you need to do your homework. And I was using the state internet like you would for any research for any interpretive program for my presentation. And that's when I got a lot of good information. And that started really getting me going. But after I got that, miraculously, the article showed up on my supervisor's desk. And that's why he had to cease and desist. He read it. There was nothing wrong with what I said. He wanted to know was, why were you wearing your uniform in the picture? I go, well, the person I was with didn't want their picture taken. So she took my picture, and I had my Stetson on. So I was in uniform, because we have to have our Stetsons for the uniform thing. And in case we don't know, Stetson is a Smokey the Bear hat. There you go. Or a campaign hat, or a Royal Mountie type of hat. That's what we wore. So I was fine with that. It was me standing in front of a tree, showing where the tree was rubbed. It's my fingers pointing at whatever it was. But after that, within 9 months, I got an okay to go be interviewed in Crescent City, which is about almost 2 hours away. Interviewed in Crescent City for real scary stories, which was about kids being scared out in the woods with different places they would go. So I can do this, but I can only answer the questions that the state of California decided were good. And so I've never seen those questions. No, I take it back. I got a list of those questions, the ones I can answer. And when I went up there, I had a nice, pretty washed patrol vehicle. I was very nicely dressed. I was in my Class A uniform. I drove up there in state time, and I got to that one of the place up in Crescent City at one of the parks. I was to be interviewed. So my interview was kind of in the afternoon. The sun was setting. The orangish glow was reflecting off the white washed pickup truck. My window was down. I had my Stetson on, and I was sitting there ready for my interview. Well, when they started asking the questions that weren't on this list, I couldn't answer them. And I finally say, didn't they give you a list? And of course, the people doing the work said, no, we don't have a list. I said, well, I can only answer the questions on this list. I have a copy if you would like to read it and ask me those questions. Anyhow, end of interview. So, but I got to watch the other gentleman get interviewed who had this plaster cast that had like hair fibers in it. And he was being interviewed with the sun setting behind him, the sunlight reflecting off the white cast. It was beautiful. So he had a great interview, but I got to watch it. But I never made it to the, I made it to the cutting room floor, but I never made it to the actual interview. But that is kind of how I got a little bit. I had people who I worked with who would tease me about it, and some of them were pretty cool about it. And as long as I don't give my opinion, because my opinion represents the agency I work for, it doesn't matter if it's my own opinion, it's always interpreted as the opinion of the agency. So I didn't give my opinion. I just regurgitated information with a little bit of humor, and everything went fine. And I did it for a long time. I even wrote a juvenile fiction books, the Bigfoot trilogy, while I was working as a ranger. And at one of the units I worked at, we actually sold them there, but the other unit did not. Okay. It's funny because the thing comes up all the time is we only want natural cultural history. We don't want any fictional stuff. And then I had to explain to them, I go, these children's books where the animals talk, those are fiction. And so that was okay. But for me to write nonfiction in a format, even into a fictional format, was not acceptable for some people. It's like a double standard. I like to think it's better, but I went back as a volunteer, and I went into the visitor center and chatted with some people I used to work, we used to work there full time, and they still don't have any Bigfoot books there. I go, how come you don't have any Bigfoot books? There's nonfiction and fictional information. Well, we don't want to sell that here. If they want it, they can go to other places and get it. And that's what it is today at the Humboldt Redwoods Interpretive Center place. Yeah, it's because the people working there, they have a different way of looking at things. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm not going to say it's right. It's just different. But the perception is quite different, because when people go there who attended my campfire programs, one, they're where they can get information. And it would have been nice to say, just go to our visitor center and they sell information that might satisfy you, what you're looking for. If you're looking for a Bigfoot romance novel, maybe they have it there, but they don't. If you're looking for a manual or an outdoor book on finding information like a field guide, you won't find it there about Bigfoot. But there are Bigfoot field guides that have natural and cultural history, which are pretty educational. But they won't sell them in those type of environments because it's against kind of their idea of what they think it should be. And that, people are people. I mean, they do what they do, right or wrong. I just don't sell myself there. That's all.
Right. So what, were you, if someone had a report, I mean, did anyone ever report things happening in the parks, and did they try to report it to you or your coworkers?
Yeah. If somebody had an encounter or something, they would, oh, you need to talk to this guy. And I'll be the ranger to go talk to him about it. I didn't do a state park report or a wildlife encounter report because I know exactly what's going to happen with that. Maybe they'll laugh about it, but the supervisor has to sign it. And whether or not they sign it, with the signing, it says, I agree with everything here. And so if they don't want to sign it, they won't sign it. So I didn't put them in a position to have to make that decision. I send stuff to BFRO, or I'll write up something totally different. Like we could track a records like BFRO. I did a lot of interviews in terms of investigations for the BFRO. That's where it would go. It would go into the BFRO. And me being a park ranger, maybe it gives it a little more credence, more credit, or maybe I being a trained professional in terms of investigations or interrogations, or however you want to call it. I've done that for a living, so I can do a great report, include a lot of information. So so you'll see some of my reports in the old BFRO stuff where I used to do it, but I told you after a few years I got tired of even having my reports questioned by the process of the BFRO record keeping thing. Like, hey, that's a Class C. I go, what makes it a C? Oh, because somebody says, when they're walking their dog in the park there at Montana de Oro, it was a bear they saw. Well, for instance, you can't have your dog on any of the trails there. So, and then what makes you so sure it was a bear? And it's those kind of things. It's when they decide they're going to favor the squeaky wheel, then that's time for me to go do something else. Because it's fair and impartial, right? People are entitled to their opinions, but if you did an investigation and the RP, the reporting party, says this is what I think I saw, and you include in a report, this is what he feels he saw, and then you do a follow-up, says, well, I wasn't there, but there's been other sightings of the area that are Bigfoot related, and there are a lot of bears in the area. I'll leave it up to you, but this is what the report includes, how they felt about it. And I figured people would rather see a report done that way than somebody come into the conclusion that wasn't there, says, oh, no, it wasn't a Bigfoot because of these reasons.
Right.
You say, I don't think it was a Bigfoot because of these reasons. I mean, that would be more professional, but not to come right out and say it's not. It's up to somebody else to decide that.
Right. So here's a question. Going back to the Bluff Creek project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really wanted to get, because Tim and we talked about this before having you on. This is definitely a question that we wanted to ask you. So, what's the best way to word that question?
Oh, so the Bluff Creek project, you spent, 10 years looking for the film site?
Well, we spent about 2 years looking for the film site till we determined where it was.
Okay.
But we still do other things there. Like we still have the wildlife program with the game cameras since 2012. Yeah. And we still are trying to figure out, based on distance, based on lens size, how tall Patty could have been. There's a lot of guesses. The high ones are probably not right. But
folks, just so you know, we're talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967. And back in 2012, you guys went in to go ahead and find the spot. And obviously you've seen this film probably 1,000 times, Robert, because you're obviously trying to find like landmarks and stuff in the actual forest. I mean, are you 100% sure that film is legit?
No, I wasn't there. I'm not 100% sure of anything.
I
mean, if you want to say yes, it's 51%. You want to say no, it's 49%, right? Yeah. When you're looking at trying to figure out a location, what I can tell you 100% is that is the film location. When we first started doing the investigation on the field in 2010, we did a lot of our, deciding between 5 locations that were pretty popular at the time. And we narrowed it down to one, which is the one ended up being, one we were considering it's actually the Patterson film site, but at the time it was Cliff Rackman's guess or educated guess or the feeling I believe this is. And we ended up proving him right on that. But that was just a theory until it was proven right with evidence. So in 2010, we narrowed down to one site. We started the process of trying to grid the place out and figure out what was there. And about 2011, we were pretty sure that was the location. And then in 2012, we brought Bill Munns up and we let him confirm that it was the location. Even Daniel Perez wasn't so sure until, when we compared the shots, like in the book, there's the Hendon's overview of 71. And then there's the actual, our map we did. I think we did that map in we have a map in 2010 and a map in 2011. We upgraded as we went. We compared those maps based on the grids we created with north, south, east, west, 30-foot squares, drawing the artifacts of 30-foot squares that are there now. It was overgrown, so you couldn't do an aerial shot that Renee did in 71. So when we went through, we had to cut corridor holes through the brush with north-south using compass work, so we're on a straight line. And we did north-south We took the middle. We went east-west, and we got that grid down. And then we went ahead, and every 30 feet, we drew another east-west line. And from the center line, every 30 feet, we did an eastern line at 30 feet and a western line at 30 feet. And when you're all done, you have these squares. And so you don't have to cut the trees down. You just have to be able to form enough tunnels through it so you can figure out these 4 points for the 30-foot squares. And then you draw inside these 30-foot squares all the artifacts, which are logs, decaying organic material, stumps, some trees, some snags. The ones that are in the picture, a lot of the snags, the alder ones are all gone. They rotted away. But the stumps are still there. So we're able to locate them by digging through overgrown areas. And they go, what's that? Cut the brush back. Hey, it looks like a stump. Okay. Well, we did that. We were able to mark it. And the whole process of us duplicating those grids and lining them up and having them match was able to, we sent that to Perez. And then he finally agreed with us in the late fall of, I think I was 2010. He finally agreed with us. And then in 2012, Bill Munns agreed with us in July because we took him there. And he had this idea that there was these 2 leaning trees on the far right. And that was his ace in the hole, he called it. And he called them the Laurel Hardy trees. Well, we knew they were there. We just had plenty of artifacts. We didn't need those trees. We drew them in. And everything was gridded out in a perfect position within reason, except for the background. We just knew where they were, so we drew them in. But when we measured the distances from all the artifacts to the background trees, then we included that with compass directions. Then we can know exactly how they sit with the artifacts. And that was fun. But that was by 2012, we already knew what we were doing. But yeah, but we started the camera project in 2012, which meant we wanted to put a bunch of game cameras all over the film site. Originally we put them in like this line on the upper floodplain site, and we wanted to see what crossed there. We didn't hide them because we started to hide them, but snow would push the vegetation down on them, and we had some trouble. So we put the cameras up, and we realized that there's a freeway of bears and mountain lion up there, and then we got the Humboldt marten in the winter of 2012, 2013. And that let us know that there still is a rare animal that still inhabits the area. And just to update on that the Forest Service was appreciative of our sitting in pictures. And they also are declaring that area a special area of interest because the animals are there. And that means if you have an endangered animal, which is that's not officially endangered as far as I know on paper, if you have a rare animal, then you have to think about protecting that habitat so the rare animal will not be affected by change, which includes timber harvest or whatever is going on, which might include visitor use in the future, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. If an animal species habitat gets trashed by people, you don't allow the people in. And there is already a Port Orford tree that's dying back because of a virus that's killing it. So that whole area is shut down for anywhere from 7 to 8 months, no public access. So that area already gets a break from people. The animals like it. I'm assuming they do. For 7 to 8 months, they basically can not see humans out there. And we as humans would still like to be there. So we still get a chance to go up for about 4 or 5 months. But if we were not allowed up there, it would bother us a lot, because this particular area should be designated as a historical site, because it's a place where an event took place, which takes me back to the 100%. The film site is 100% true. Something was filmed there, and it's on the Patterson film. And whatever it is, call her Patty, call her Mr. Hieronymus in a suit that doesn't fit him right, call it whatever you want. That location, the filming did take place right there, and it took place on October 20th, 1967. So we just proved that location does exist. But what we're trying to do with the camera size of the lens, and we have an idea of the distance, we're trying to estimate the size that Patty might have been. Some people have right ahead and taken on the earlier frames the foot and stacked them on top of each other. I think it was I can't think of his name right now. Anyhow, it was done by earlier researchers. That was a great way to do it. Some people assume that Patty is over 7'3" or whatever, but I don't think so. Rowdy doesn't think so. He's good with the camera actions. I don't even think Bill Munns thinks it's that tall. And almost had his name. He's in the Smithsonian with his dog, skeletons.
Oh, Grover Krantz.
Grover Krantz thought it was at best 6'7" or 6'5". And I'm with that. It's a lot. It's not as tall as we think it is. Because of sexual dimorphism in the species of primates where men tend to be larger than women, that the same in the primate world, and Bigfoot is a primate, then it'd be the same thing where the males are huge and Patty's allegedly a female. She's not going to be as large as the male species. So that would explain why 7 foot tall is probably not what she was. We may never know her exact height, but we can estimate it based on looking at different aspects of the research. And that's kind of what we're kind of doing. It's like you figure out whether it's a 15 millimeter or a 20 millimeter or 25 millimeter lens. That's helpful. That means if you're filming it and she's within this range size, where would you be standing? How far away from the position would be? And we built a little platform from recycled material out there where we're trying to duplicate the Roger's 352 position where Roger was either kneeling or standing, because he's only 5'3". So, and then take away 3 or 4 inches, then you get her height. So he could have been on his knee because he tripped and he dropped to a knee for steady the camera. Well, we don't know exactly how tall that would have been, but estimating from position based on what Green had said where Roger's frame 1 position would have, I mean, not frame 1, but 352 position would have been. And based on Renee DeHenden's estimation of where it would be. So from those things, we kind of have an idea and we're trying to make it work from there. And Roddy Kelly he's the guy who's on top of that. I just know what he tells me, but I get to be there to help him though. So I do learn some stuff.
I mean, wouldn't Bob Giblin know how the film was being taken at the time?
Yeah, he shared, I think, that he fell off, that Roger fell off. And I know Bob had a rifle with him, but that wasn't their intent, was to shoot anything unless they were protecting themselves. So
yeah, that was the plan. Yeah, what it was is the time Patty looks over his shoulder with that famous stride, where she kind of looks over and crosses the leg over. Bob, if I remember rightly, because I've heard Bob talk about it many times, that when he crossed the creek, I'll make sure I say that right. When he crossed the creek, and that's when it was noticed, and he got a look from the creature, and he was pretty much flanking the side of it as she was moving towards the bowling alley area, just before Roger runs out of film. And that's what Roger had to call him back. Hey, come back. I don't be here by myself. And what you talked to about all the other 356 squatches that were in the bushes watching everything, that Beck Jord had circled them so you could find them. That's a whole different story of whether there were other animals at the area at the time. And I don't even want to go there with that. But anyhow, I don't know why I brought it up. Oh, yeah, because it's kind of interesting. Okay, go ahead.
You knowing, spending your career in the woods and then spending since 2010 at the Bluff Creek site. And then obviously it was 42 or so years later. I mean, how hard would it have been for two people to go and film something that wasn't real? I mean, what would their challenges would have been if that was actually, Bob Hieronymus or someone else in the suit?
Well, how many takes did it take to walk down the gravel bar or the sandbar at the time? Because in 64, that's alluvial floodplain. It was a flood in 64, and it was covered with silt. So you have sand, and the sand is exposed, so there's really easy to see the tracks. So how many takes would it take, or did they take, to walk up and down there and then turn around and come back and walk up and down, turn around and come back? Because when they went back to film to Port Cass, not too long afterwards, there weren't a lot of extra tracks running around for paddy tracks, whatever. So you got this trackway, and then you got to have the stride length, and then you got to have, how much film, and it starts in the middle of the film. It doesn't start at the beginning of the film in terms of it was the reel of film. It's like you're filming all these nature scenes, and then boom, all of a sudden the last bit of the film is Roger, running after trying to film something. So if you're going to film just that, wouldn't you start like the beginning of the film? Okay, take number 1, let's go. So that's just something to think about. the water where it started, it could have happened. It could have been where the sound of the water where you couldn't hear, and then the Roger and Bob, I'm pretty sure, were yakking away, or like I do lots of times. You're in internal thoughts and you're thinking, and then you're surprised by movement, and your horses pick up before you do, and then comes the scramble. Because back in the story, Roger's, the horse got spooked. He had to control the horse. He had to lay the horse down, or the horse fell down. He bent one of his stirrups. His foot was stuck. He had to get his foot out. He even bruised his foot with that. They had the camera in the saddlebag, and he had to open the saddle. Most likely, I would have probably had that saddlebag open, but he had to reach in and pull the saddlebag out, and then he had to turn the camera on, or maybe he had to visually locate where Patty was. Then you have to run to get closer to that point. Then you have to turn the camera on. And I think it was a trigger where it went on and off a couple times. I think Bill Munns talked about that. And then you had to follow it. So there's a lot going on with this. And I haven't seen a Sasquatch as far as I know. And so I can't tell you they're 100% they exist. But I can tell you that the film footage is, Patty is like this big. Let me do the one side. There you go. Let's use this hand. Which one is this? Wait, no, this one. It's everything's backwards here. So Patty is this big, but the frame is this big. And when you blow up the frame to get a close look at her, now you start losing the quality of your shot, right? And you start seeing things that you want to see, which includes the Beck George's creatures in the forest watching everything. So you lose some integrity. So now we got this high-tech intelligence way to take a photograph, and IA will fix it for you. But now we're seeing all this detail in this photograph. We're seeing like herniated discs. We're seeing all sorts of stuff. And now we're seeing how big her teeth are, whether they're yellow or I'm making the last part up, but we're seeing all this detail that we hadn't noticed before. And we have to ask that question is, when are we making stuff up? And when are we seeing what we're actually seeing? Because MK Davis did a nice job of stabilizing, which was very nice. And that gave us a better chance to look at some of the detail that we could see. But once you start blowing stuff up, you start losing some of the integrity of the shot. So that makes it a little more challenging. Like when I watch the movie footage, even today when I watch it, my brain says, look, I see muscle movement. Now, I don't know if that's really muscle movement or not, but my brain's saying it is. I'm not seeing a herniated muscle. That's an anomaly in some of the frames. I mean, I think I'm seeing muscle movement. I think I'm seeing what I need to see. But am I really? I guess. If I believe and want to believe it is there, then I'm seeing all that good stuff, right? But if somebody doesn't believe, then are they seeing the herniated? Are they seeing the muscle movements? They're not seeing what I'm seeing. Is that because it's fake? It's a guy in a suit? Or is it because it was hard to capture the detail with the quality of film at the time? So I'm not 100% on anything, except that's the location of the film site. And then let's just make it even more complicated. Let's look at how much time it took them to get out of there and get back and get the film mailed somewhere, maybe mailed or whatever, or shipped, and show up Sunday for a viewing in Yakima. There's so many other features and time elements that make everything crazy. But it's like being in the back of the bus. You're not driving it. You're sitting in the back and you got all these questions. And the guy driving it just focused on driving. It's difficult to answer some of this stuff. And people have been working on it for years. But yeah, do I believe there's a Bigfoot creature? I think there's something out there. Let me put it this way, based on what I've experienced, and now you want to know all that stuff, right? So based on what I've experienced, I have questions, and there's some things that I've seen that I can't explain under the normal logical process of finding answers. Like I'm a methodical, Robert, I need to get from point A to point B. How would you do it? Well, let's look at how much fuel you have in your tank, what type of vehicle you're using, what's the terrain like. So my brain processes it. There's a lot of interference in figuring out how it goes. I'm my worst critic. So when I have an encounter of some kind and I can't explain it, it makes me go, It kind of pushes me more towards, maybe there's something that we just don't understand out there. And there's some people who haven't had that detailed experience who want to believe it's out there, who will take anything that and turn it into what they need to do. I mean, that's logic. I mean, that makes sense. I'm not quite there, but I'm at the point where when you hear something or you see something or you experience something and you can't justifiably explain it, then you have to ask more questions. And I've come to the conclusion that there's something out there that I don't quite understand. Now, not to go woo on you guys, but people ask me, I've been in places where they're haunted. I got no doubt in my mind they're haunted. People will say, well, there's a logical explanation for all this stuff. Like maybe the power lines have generated so much energy, your brain's seeing things you shouldn't see, or maybe you didn't eat enough, or maybe you weren't drinking enough, or maybe you saw a movie and it kind of made you think you saw something. So all these factors do play in a lot of people's sightings. And we all don't see the same thing. And we also forget our sightings over time, and our brain will fix things that we don't quite understand. So also now you have a perfect view of the creature you saw, but what was it at the time? Did your brain fix it, or did you eventually get there? Or is that how you remembered it? Because I do remember things when I have an encounter. I go, oh, I forgot all about that. Well, did that really happen, Robert? Or did you just remember that? Because when you first have a sighting, you should write everything down that you remember.
Yep.
Yeah. And then
or you could
have a
even
second
video
sheet of
record
paper.
yourself,
Right.
to make it easier.
Yeah.
You could just video record yourself.
Yes, I keep forgetting all the technology. I'm up to primitive knuckle walking. Use it. Remember everything, and then interview yourself again and see how much new stuff you have, what you remembered that you didn't remember before. Does that mean it's made up? Not necessarily. It means you had plenty of time to think about that encounter. And I know I do a lot of thinking about things I experience, and I try to analyze and say, well, could this have been the reason? Like a simple one, maybe not so simple. Like I get in an argument all the time with Tate. I'm going to put Tate on the spot here. And I talk about this where on one of my encounters, I felt pressure on the chest. I felt the ground almost vibrating. It was my pad under that I was laying on. I felt a vibration. I felt my body pushed in and settled, and it was difficult to sit up. And then, of course, Tate comes in and goes, oh, there's a paralysis. There's just all, blah, blah. I go, yeah, but you weren't there, Tate. And it was interesting that this particular incident that took place to me a couple days later, it happened to another individual that described the same feeling I had. So when you can't jump to conclusions about it's this scientific explanation when somebody else has the same encounter, but at a different date and experiences everything you did. And I have no doubt in my mind that I experienced something that's a little different than the usual, because even the digital recorders that were going recorded a sound that was different during that time period when this encounter took place. And it was also interesting that a storm front had moved through and the winds had picked up, and the energy level was pretty high that day. So now, does wind energy or high energy make certain activities take place? Now we're getting really woo, aren't you? Yeah. And so now I look at so many things when I have an experience to try to figure out what it is. And I know a lot of us out in the woods do have experiences, and I know professionals who do this for a living out in the woods, and they have these things they see and they experience these things. And they go, I've never had that happen before. Or this is not an animal that I know.
Right. It doesn't mean it's woo, though, because it just could be something that is scientific that we just don't understand yet.
Yeah, scientific explanation just means
more research necessary.
When you have an explanation, does it mean it's still not scientific just because we don't understand it? Eventually there could be an explanation. People are always crazy when they're like, oh, the world is round and,
that's flat.
Gravity and everything. Those people were wacky too,
The world's round.
or considered wacky. In reality, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have
a lot. You're right.
as much of the knowledge about, the universe that we have. So, yeah, I wouldn't call it woo either.
I think
I throw, sorry to interrupt, but I throw the word woo out there because there's two teams, right? There's the woo team, and then there's the flesh and blood team. So,
and then there's the independents. You do have people who are just like whatever. They're open to listen to whatever, and
they're hybrids. Yeah,
the hybrids.
I'm kind of those hybrids because I see both sides, and I've experienced both sides, and so it's still up. Like, let's say if the place is high energy or haunted, there's the ghost investigators go out with their little electronic apparatuses and they pick up energy fields. Whether that was really happening or not, I'm not a physics guy, but wouldn't that be a scientific approach to something? If it picks up
Yeah.
more energy, or let's say a river running where the ions are much greater, that allows the mind to function at a higher level, or maybe become more relaxed. So is that science or is that just reality?
Yeah. I tend to think it's both
Yeah.
science and reality.
Yep.
So
So
reality, that's what it is.
There you go.
so another question, just for people out in the woods, and this isn't really related to the subject, but what would you suggest people to have with them to keep safe? So if I'm going hiking and maybe I think it's only a 3-hour trip, or if I'm going hiking for a weekend, you know, you've seen a lot of things out there. What are the essentials
I
that
think
people
what he's
should have?
asking is, what should we take with us camping next month?
No. I'm
Yes,
just in
I
general.
do.
No, I'm not.
Asking for a friend, Robert.
I've got a list. I remember Daryl Collier had this list of like 300 things. I'm
We
like,
just started camping together. Like, you know, Tim had done some things with the boys or whatever, but you know, like we're starting to get into like serious, like remote camping, you know, where we're just like renting a camping space in somebody's 800, you know, square, you know, 800 acre property or whatever. Not, I mean, are we going to see a Bigfoot? Probably not, but let's get in a good position, you know, and in the meantime, we'll have fun. We'll go hiking. We'll, you know, see birds, you know, the whole experience. But anyway, so yeah, what is the best way to protect yourself in situations because we don't have predators that are dangerous here in Delaware to humans. So yeah, like
the essentials for hiking and camping:
bears,
water, eat, food.
Two-legged predators.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Looking for opportunities, because campers usually leave things unlocked or whatever. But yeah, first rule is don't lose your key. It's your car. Put it someplace where you're not going to
have 2 sets.
Yeah. Some people have a magnetic box under the car for your key. Like Rowdy, he always puts it on the tire. I'm not going to say which one. You have 4 choices. He always puts it on the tire. And it's usually there when you come back. Pack rats are rats that are huge. They're like metal objects. I'm always afraid that a pack rat's going to say, look at this silver thing, and take it to its collection, and you'll never get it back. Because I've missed some metal things before, and I'm pretty sure the pack rats have walked off with it, commandeered them. And you'll find them someday in some big old 6-foot tall cone-shaped nest that they lived in the condos that they continue to build and add on to it. You'll find a storage shed inside with all the metal objects that have been missing from people's lives for the last 150 years. But anyhow, safety is kind of a big thing for me too. Is bring plenty to eat. Safety is important. Let people know when you're going to be, how long you're going to be, and how long you're going to be up there. I do carry a firearm with me. I do have that. Some people don't. They're not into guns. That's fine. There is bear pepper spray. When I call it that, bear spray is great. It get that nice bright orange stuff, But bear spray is good because it can be a great deterrent. If you're not using lethal, you want to just scare things away. You can hose it with that. Just remember, if you're downwind, you get hosed too. It's very important.
Yeah, that's what I don't want to happen.
Yeah, well, you check the weather. Make sure the wind's blowing the right way before you use it. Reposition yourself so you're upwind. Because if you're downwind anyway, it's not going to know you're there because they can't see very well. But they can see you eventually when they stumble upon you. But if you're upwind, then they know you're there anyway. So, and then if you're upwind, it's perfect. You just spray downwind towards them, right?
Right. So just move around, basically, get in a better position for it.
Yeah.
Before it eats you.
Exactly.
If the bear's charging you and you spray it, you probably should step aside and let the bear run through the mists and not run you over in the process. Anyhow, that's minor stuff. Yeah, and so that's good to have. And food's always important to have, and always have extra in case. Some people have these battery-powered radios in the case the nose has something important, like, I don't know, there's a fire coming in your direction. That'd be nice to know, wouldn't it? Usually you can see the smoke but maybe it's burning another way. So being aware of what's going on in the world is not too bad.
Oh yeah.
We with this last trip we've had like, I think there were 6 flats amongst our group, 6 flats in the middle of nowhere. So we had to fix them with what we had. So I think having ability to fix your flat tires is nice. You might not think about it. Like if your name is Tate Hieronymus, where you like to run your car at night and use all your gas, and then in the morning you want to borrow gas from everybody else. Having extra fuel sometimes is important if you're going to be out for extended long time. And I like to bring my bike with me, because guess when your car breaks down, guess what you have left?
Right.
You have
Yay.
transportation.
Well, you're really prepared, Robert.
Well, he's a park
no,
ranger.
Yeah, okay.
My FJ is so stuffed with stuff in there. It's like I have things I don't need. So I started actually eliminating some of the things. And then sometimes I wish I hadn't. But and if I want to bring a partner with me, I have to give up a whole bunch of stuff because I put everything on the passenger seat too. So so my friends go, yeah, just put stuff on the roof instead of inside, and get out those little trailers so you can bring more stuff. Yeah.
There you go.
And
That's awesome.
Let's see what else. I just know, and maps are good, and compasses are good. Know how to use a freaking map.
Maps and compasses. Do we have that? Okay, thank you.
People use the GPS units. They're great. They're nice. They'll tell you when to go to the bathroom, when not to go to the bathroom, when to eat, how much to eat. But if, let's say, you lose that, or you break it, or your battery somehow goes dead and you don't have enough batteries, it's nice to have the old-fashioned compass point thingy and a paper map, which is nice. And a paper map, you can draw stuff on it, like your last known location where you're at when they find you, where you went, or you can just redirect it, because the old school was to orient your map with compass with corrected declination, and you draw a line in direction you're traveling, and then you can double check with back bearings. That's old school stuff. People go, what are you talking about?
No, that sounds so super cool. I would love to learn that. Yeah. Probably just watch like a good YouTube video for that.
Yeah. It's a good skill set to have. It's a dying art, but you rather have a dying art than be a dying person and wish you had, know where you're going. Because a compass doesn't lie to you as to where north is.
Right.
The magnetic poles are slowly moving, but if you, in your area, you figure out where your magnetic north with corrections, you could be in a pitch black darkness, overcast skies where you can't use starlight to navigate off the North Star, and you can just pick a compass direction and that'll help you. That's better than getting lost and walking in circles. So, but going back to what was the other thing we were going to talk about?
Safety.
Well, first aid kit. I think you should have some basic medical stuff, which might include some aspirin. It might include some Tylenol if you need to, and pain and stuff. Is you get hurt, and antibiotics. I didn't used to have it in my kit, my small kit. I want to keep it small, but I got a cut, and it was just a cut, right? But I didn't disinfect it properly, and that cut got bad over a 3-day period. And I realized that if I had some disinfectant antibiotic, it went away really quick. So that's something I would suggest if you're out for a more extended time. Get something that's going to help you cure your injuries and not let them get infected, because that'll put it into any trip real quick. An infection.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because you don't have running water. We take it for granted we're home. We can clean a wound out, and you can just soap in water, and then, but you don't have that when you're out in the woods.
Right.
No, and how much water do you need? I mean, your body shuts down after 3 days of not drinking much water. So if you don't have enough water, you have to have ability to purify your water system. I guess you could plastic container, cover it up, put vegetation inside, heat. Condensation will drip onto the plastic and it'll drip down into a container. You can do that, but it's going to take you a while. But there's a way, like survival, getting water back, or finding an old dry riverbed and digging down so you start hitting it somewhere. But having a filter system, I think, is pretty important. Water's kind of a great thing to have.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be bringing a lot of water.
Yeah, we had so much last time. We had so much water. We went and bought some.
Oh yeah, we didn't have enough water the first time. But that's okay. Yeah. Hey, you live and you learn. You got to get your own camping style going, and so this is our first time on our own, though.
Without a group. Yeah.
Just the two of us.
Yeah, not to
You
worry.
and I.
You
What?
don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about Giardia for the first 3 days. It's just like when you get home after a few more days, then Giardia kicks your bottom. Yeah, so you can drink anything. Just be ready to treat yourself when you get home.
When you get home.
Yeah, no, we got we
tablets.
got
We'll
a
be
lot
all right.
of first
There's-
aid stuff
yeah.
going on. We're good, but we're just worried about getting eaten by a bear or
Oh, yeah, and also don't sleep with your food. I know sometimes it's
Yeah.
tempting to have those midnight snacks. And back in the grizzly country, if you just want to call it, is you eat in one area, you sleep in another, and you wash your dishes in another. You don't do everything in your main campsite because the smells. And if you want to keep your food and you like it, then you should put it where animals can get to it, which means counterbalance off of ropes and trees, or
in the
locking
car, right? Can't you just leave it in the car?
Yeah, you can lock your food in a car if you're by your car.
Yeah,
If you're not by your car and you want to camp away from your vehicle, then lock your food in your car. But bears still rip cars apart. That's why they put them in food boxes in some campgrounds, metal boxes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
whole idea of keeping the
good
bears
enough.
from ripping your car apart.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
My Jeep's really old anyway.
There you go. But I think you should like spill food in your campsites, leave food out, and then set your cameras up so you can get some great wildlife shots.
Or like you've done is you cook bacon, right?
Bacon is great. Eat it, cook it, and let the wind drift down to where your neighbors are, and your neighbors come check it out.
And they might not be human neighbors. They could be anything, you know.
You never know.
It could be just about anything. Oh yeah, and the last thing is, if you're out in the woods trying to capture a creature, then you probably should have a way to capture its face, right? So you might want to bring camera equipment. Some people like to use game cameras, and there's always the school is the game cameras might be generating, the battery might have a frequency or a sound that things that are real sensitive can hear it or smell it, and then they'll know your camera's there. That's why we don't get Bigfoot shots and cameras. I like to see all that proven, but that's some of the theories is you go out without any way to record it, you're gonna have a great experience. You take out everything you need to record it, you won't have nothing. I mean, that's some of the philosophy talk I always hear.
Same thing happens to me when I go to Marshall's. You know, I'm like, I'm just going to go and return these shoes, and I end up seeing all the things I love, and I don't have any time. But when I go in to look for something,
it's not there.
It's not there.
Well, that's the way it works. I used to not go with the camera, and it's not because I was trying to not scare anything away. It's because back in the old days, back in the early 1998, 99, I had a bunch of kids I was raising. I didn't have a lot of funds to go buy game cameras or get top of the line camera equipment. I didn't even carry around a digital recorder. I had that little cheap little one you put in your pocket, and it took great pictures, but that was it. I didn't have anything high tech. I didn't have a sound system. And I remember one of the guys I go research with used to go, "What kind of researcher are you? You don't carry any of this stuff." And then I had to explain to him that I couldn't afford a lot of it. But anyhow, so not having it, I did have some interesting experiences. And even with the camera, I've felt and seen and recorded and heard stuff. So I don't think it scares away too much stuff. Like a nice digital recorder to record eating sounds like knocks. Like you hear these knocks and you're like, oh, Bigfoot's knocking on trees. And I've got some great knocks, but then I also been in the woods and have actually seen branches fall off of trees or been next to a tree and hear it go pop. And what it was is that the center of the tree has a fissure crack down the middle that allows it to move in the winds, right? So those will pop from time to time. So the question I always ask myself, was that the tree knock I heard? And with that said, I have to share this story as a ranger doing search and rescue where we stopped at this one section off there's a road section, and I parked my unit there and I went on a quad, and we're looking for missing persons who get lost. And my job was to drive up this one road trail section as far as I could get. So I did that. It was dark, and we got the call. It says, "Hey, come back. We found them. 4 individuals got lost. They hiked up the top of the mountain and to make a phone call." Okay, that's not where they came from, but that's And then they realized they were lost, so they called. And anyhow, so they were found, and I was getting ready to go, and my supervisor came by and goes, "Hey, you good, Robert?" I go, "Yeah, I'm good. I'll be out here in no time." "Okay, I'll see you back at the office." Okay. This is like 9:30 at night. So I got my quad loaded in the back. I got it secured. I got the little sled thing slipped in there, and I was getting ready to go, turn my car on, and we got, I should go check my quad, because I don't want to be that guy who's driving down the road at night, trying to get back to the base, driving too fast, and didn't secure my quad properly and have it roll off the back of the pickup truck. I'm pretty sure some of you have actually experienced that before. And I didn't want that to be me. So I get out of the car, the engine's running. I get out and I hear this knock. It sounds like somebody took a baseball bat to a tree not too far away, less than a stone's throw away up the hillside. It's a whack. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, it sounded like a baseball bat. It didn't sound like a tree shifting because the wind hit it and it's shifting back. It sounded like somebody hauled off and hit it with a large object. And so I'm hearing that. And so I go and I turn the engine off, and I'm there now for 15 minutes listening, trying to say, yeah, I got a Bigfoot. And I'm listening and I don't hear anything again. I go, well, maybe if I went inside and act like I'm leaving, it'll do it, and come back out again. So I went back in the truck, turned the engine on, turned it off, got out of the car, nothing. Went back inside, left the engine running, out of the car, nothing. Walked around the car again. Now we're like 30 minutes after my supervisor had left, and I should be getting back because he's waiting for me, and I can't stay there any more time, so I leave reluctantly. Would I have stayed there all night? Well, if I wasn't working, I would have. If I was camping, I would have. But I got people waiting for me at the office, so that's an unknown. So imagine that sound. So now, fast forward two more years. Robert's walking down the trail. It's getting late. Same area where he saw the bear. He's walking along, and he heads towards this one bridge. But he curves back around, and as soon as he drops out of sight of this edge of this hill, I hear whack. Somebody took a heavy object like a baseball bat to a large tree, and that's what it sounded like. I back up. I look around. I see nothing. I walk over to this big tree, look behind it. There's nothing back there. It happened like within 30 yards of where I was. And there was nothing there, nobody I could see that did it. And I was like, this is weird. And so I waited again. It was getting late, and I walked back over the car. And, I had banged on a couple of the bridges with my walking stick. My impact weapon I carry in my uniform. Mm-hmm. I extended my baton, whacked on the bridge, and listen, no return knocks. I go, this is not fair. I only hear one. I get nothing in return. I have no idea what's going on. But that's just another experience of, I hear a knock, and I'm minding my own business. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and something did it. Or was it the tree that shifted, and that was that popping sound from the tree? Because there's a lot of large, huge redwood trees in that area. Could have been one of those. They all have fissure cracks in them. But was it windy? Crazy. It wasn't windy. It just decided to pop on its own. Or was there a Sasquatch waiting for me to go around and disappear from sight, and then whacking the tree and then hiding, waiting for me to go look for him?
Right.
That's probably what it was.
Screwing with you.
That's probably what it was.
Depends how you
Robert,
look at it.
You have the best stories.
Yeah,
we just love your stories, Robert. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and answer our questions.
Again, yeah.
It's always a pleasure. You're also just like a really easy person to talk to.
Oh, great.
And we appreciate you.
Yep.
Yeah, is it possible to put one more of those little
yeah.
Of course.
There we go.
There you go. There you
Love
go.
Project, Amazon.
Well, yeah, we'll have links for it in the show notes, and
so people can link and go right to it.
Yeah, go buy Robert's book.
Woohoo!
It's a big project.
Hey, just so you see, I'm not all one-sided. There's another book that's out there too, that's, available for you.
Thank you, Robert.
To let the cat out of the bag, there's someone in this small group of the three of us here that's supposed to be in that book, and I'm just waiting for him to make time to get the interview done.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait, it's for the second one, right? Yeah. Oh, okay.
For the second book.
Yeah, I apologize for not filling out all the forms and getting them back to you.
That's all right. We're just going to call you.
That's all right, honey.
And here's another book, another member of the Bluff Creek Project.
Ooh, okay. That is a good one.
Yeah, this one, it came out this year or last year.
I think so. Yeah, we
Yeah.
chatted with Dustin
Yep.
about it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, just for that. And it's a little thick. Well, I don't know. It's a thick. Let's see.
It
His
is.
book
It's
thicker.
yes.
Well,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
his
No,
book.
no,
No.
no.
My book is
But
thicker.
it's taller. It's taller.
Okay, I'll give that to you. It's a little taller, but
Yes.
I have a lot more.
So you got
pictures in my
more
book.
words in there.
Yeah, he has a lot more words. I just got more pictures. But
That's important.
Pictures speak thousands of words. So if we take
Yep.
that in consideration, then maybe I have more words than he
Yep,
does.
that's true.
Yep.
I
And
love the
people
I
love
love the
some
concept.
pictures. People love pictures, Robert.
Cool,
Yeah.
Robert. Well, thanks again. We
really
appreciate
appreciate you, Robert. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
always.
care.
Chat soon.
All right, see you guys later. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.